All right, I will call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I am Peyton Jamison, Chairman. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezoning, use permits, concurrent variance applications, comprehensive land use plan, and plan map and other related plans, and amendments to the zoning ordinance. I will introduce our board members. To my left is Sumit Shah. Paul Moore. To my right is Chris Doty and Mark Bittner. The petitions will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures conducting this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remains with the allotted time. The staff of the Community Development Department will be keeping track of time and will inform you periodically of the remaining time for your presentation. Each speaker must fill out a speaker card before speaking and leave it with the staff member of the Community Development Department. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. When an opponent of a rezoning action is made within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being opposed, campaign contributions aggregating $250 or more to a local government official of the local government which will consider the application, it shall be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of the relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and you have not filed a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak for your point of view. Each application has been properly filed with the Department of Community Development. Signs have been posted on each site. The matter has been advertised and the notices have been mailed to property owners affected by this zoning as required by the Milton Zoning Ordinance. The Planning Commission's recommendation will be forwarded to the City of Milton Mayor and City Council for final disposition. The Mayor and City Council hearing will be held approximately 3.5 weeks from this hearing on the third Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in council chambers. The Community Development Department has reviewed each application in conjunction with various agencies and departments, both internal and external to the city. Staff's recommendations, findings, and conclusions are here before us in written form, which has been made available to all petitioners and to the public. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, dialogue with the person speaking, or outbursts. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on silent. All remarks will be addressed by the Planning Commission. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. In addition, the applicant shall not submit material to the Planning Commission during the meeting unless requested to do so by the Commission. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the Commission in consideration of your application should be submitted to the staff of the Community Development Department to be included in the normal distribution of packages to the Commission. Finally, to the applicant, if your petition is deferred in accordance with the Milton Zoning Ordinance, you are required to update or obtain a new sign for reposting. Failure to update or repost will result in further delay. There are no exceptions. At this time, we call for public comment, so if there's any general public comment that you have that is not on the posted agenda. Do we have any?
Didn't receive any.
Okay, I will close public comment and go to approval of action minutes.
I move we approve the action minutes from our Wednesday, December 28th, 2016 meeting as presented by staff.
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And Kathy, election of officers.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, this is the time of the year for our annual election of officers. I would like to call for nominations for Chair of the Planning Commission.
I'd like to nominate Peyton Jamison as our chair for the Planning Commission.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for Chair? Okay, I'd like to call the nomination. All in favor of Peyton Jamison as Chair of the Planning Commission for this coming year, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. I'd like to open the floor for nominations for Vice Chair.
I'd like to nominate Paul Moore for Vice Chair.
I'll second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? I'd like to call the question. All in favor of Paul Moore as Vice Chair for the coming year for the Planning Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Michelle? Right?
Okay, so the next item will be the consideration of the Downtown Milton Crabapple Placemaking Plan. Here to present is TSW, Tom Walsh and Sarah McCauley.
And as you know, we've had several stakeholder committee meetings on this at the library and here as well. So this is the follow-up at this point to the Planning Commission. And should you vote for us to proceed, we will then move this on to the City Council for their review as well.
Okay. And we'll have public comment.
Afterwards.
After the presentation, we'll have public comment.
Good. Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'd like to be elected tonight with that unanimous
Got
vote.
it. Got it.
I'm Tom Walsh with TSW, and I would like to start off by saying this week I started in Alpharetta, and my meeting started at 6:30 before the council, and we ended at 11. We did win the vote, but the project probably still won't go forward. But it was a well fought project. And then I've been in Johns Creek for since Tuesday, and will be there. Was there all day today, and will be there all day tomorrow doing their comprehensive plan. And it's interesting to see where they're at in their history, in that they're struggling for the town center that you all have and have started. And theirs is a heavy lift, even once we can figure that out. We've come up with some great ideas, but it's a heavy lift. So I'm excited by the fact that you all are so far ahead in your thought process of where and how the town center should evolve. That says a lot for you in having the foresight to look into that. So we're at the end of this project. This is Sarah. Sarah was going to talk to you as well. She's a associate, newly minted at TSW, and has done a lot of hard work on this project and should be commended for her hard work. We're going to. How many of you have seen this presentation of the group up here? Has most everybody seen it? Only 2 people. Okay, so and then you all seen it. So we have most everybody seen it, but I'll try to be as quick as I can with it. We're going to review I'm sorry. We're going to review previous steps, the charrette review, the final recommendations, and next steps. Oh, I'm waiting for mine to go. So this is the context of the slide, and it's really we have Broadwell, Birmingham, Mayfield, and Crabapple were our crossroads, and that's where we started off with this project. And I think the most important thing of the context of the slide was when we were going after the project and when we started the project, it became very apparent from a planner, a professional standpoint, that you had all the bones, everything was there in place. There was just tweaks that needed to be made, and probably the most important part of it was the road. I'm going to let you do that because I'm going to forget. So it really was looking at the road. So in this slide that's up, we looked at the community resources, and everything is basically within a half-mile view. You have your schools other than the Milton High School, but all the schools within the crossroads are within walking distance. You have 2 potential parks ultimately. You have a utility easement that ultimately might be a walking path. It won't be in this plan, but has the potential for that. And then you have your business district and where your new city hall is going. When we looked at the susceptibility map, there really wasn't a lot, outside the core area to study. The brown is where we had potential, lots of highly susceptible to change. The lighter green was somewhat susceptible to change, and the green was really no change whatsoever. So it gave us a small palette and an area to work in, but that allowed us to concentrate on coming up with ideas. The most important part that you're also doing, and this is the most important map, because this is what all small towns are struggling with, is connectivity. And I really can't say this, and I can't even exaggerate this. This is your last chance. You've got to do this. If you don't do this, you're in trouble. I mean, it's the same thing with Johns Creek. They have one road, 141. They have 85% of the people that use that road don't live in Johns Creek, and so it's clogged all the time. Here you have a chance with your traffic to break that up with your with the New Charlotte and Heritage walk area, as well as other potential streets that you could put in, and it's just enough to start to eliminate some of that traffic through the core area, and still you're going to get a good traffic flow. So the market study, general characteristics, there are many families, as you all are well aware of in the area. There's very good retail within a 5-mile range is extraordinary. You really don't need a lot more retail. I mean, some smaller shops like you already have, some restaurants and stuff are probably the most important point, and some service type area. It'd be great to have some dry cleaners and stuff like that within this area. Much higher medium income than most areas in the Atlanta metro area. It's one of the faster growing areas. This whole quarter has exploded, and that's another thing that I tell a lot of individuals in your town. A lot of people worry because Milton's grown so fast, Alpharetta, and the time to have stopped all that growth was before 400 was built. The minute 400 opened, the day it opened, the war was over. I mean, you were going to get this explosion, this growth, because it's a great interstate, it's a highway taking you as far as Dahlonega. So you're going to have that continuation. There is room for growth in the next few years, and there is strong demand for rental housing as well as growth through 18. The next slide really shows, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we're going to get that towards the end, but one of the other areas was how do we park this with all this new, with existing commercial retail that we have and future retail. And the first thoughts were a parking garage, but interestingly enough, our marking analyst who doesn't do this but really took it on their shoulders, really cataloged all the available parking within the 4 quadrants, and it turns out you have a lot of available parking that can be shared parking. So we have that solution, which some of you have already heard, and I'll get into that in a few minutes. The market study did show that you can have 10 new homes per year easily in this area. 50 homes per year for the detached, and I'm sorry, for sale condos and attached about 10 homes a year. 24 units of attached townhouses per year, and if you so wanted, you could have 60 units per year in flats. So the market in this area is very strong, and I also say that one of the things, if you're reading your planning and the demographers, what's happening today is that high-end rental is very important. Look at Avalon, for instance. It's in demand because there's a lot of baby boomers that want the rental. My grandfather was a very wealthy person, and when they retired, he rented. He did not want to own property at the time, and that's sort of the trend, the way it is today. So I wouldn't discount rental. I think it's where it is and how it's built and what kind it is what's so important to consider.
Tom, may I interrupt for just a minute?
Yes, sir.
I was struggling with this just to make sure I understood the impact on some of the parking. By general description, I understand each of the things that you just went through, but the attached condos, is that typically lot parking, or is that private parking for those?
It'll probably be in this area. It'd be private parking.
Okay, and same thing for the attached townhomes?
Yes.
It would probably be private parking?
Oh, yeah.
Meaning underneath or
Yes, sir.
within the building itself?
There'd be some covered type parking.
Okay, thank you. And apartments fit into the stacked flats? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
And it could be, and you'll see this in this the east side where we developed this town, the addition to the town center. There's some potentially apartments over retail on that, or could be condominium. It just depends. But I would think in this price point area, you might have a covered, some sort of covered parking, but it wouldn't be garage parking. It might be just, I lived in Texas for 12 years, and when we did this high end, we always had covered parking for the cars because of the environment in that case.
Thank you.
Your retail market is very strong. It's just, you've got the dollars here and the population. So you certainly can take on more retail, as well as you could absorb more office space, which I think is important. One of the things is that a lot of complaints come, well, we don't want all this coming in. Well, if you have office, you have people that can walk, live, work in the same place. I am one of those people. I moved from Decatur to the Beltline so I could get a bike, and other than coming here, I take my bike to work every day. I put 4,000 miles on my car in the last 4 years. I put about 1,000 miles a year. So that trend's happening. That could easily happen within this. So there will be an increase in traffic, but we're going from a traffic engineering standpoint, we'll reduce car trips the way this design is evolving.
So in September, we held a 3-day charrette. It started out with a walking audit led by Ian Lockwood, who was our traffic planner engineer. And then we did design work for a couple of days with all of our consultant team, had public open houses in the evening, and then gave a final presentation of all of the results about 2 weeks later. We started out vetting some placemaking goals before the charrette, and made sure that our designs addressed those goals. Essentially, it was creating a trail network, having locations and programming for parks, establishing a parking management plan, adding and enhancing streets, and I believe that is all of them. Yeah, and locate development where appropriate. So we came up with our framework design that addresses all of those things. The streets we wanted to make adjustments to include Crabapple Road, Heritage Walk, the street that's under construction, Birmingham Highway, and Mayfield Road. And then trails connecting the schools to the new potential parks and the retail, and then the 2 parks that I've already mentioned. Development within the northeast quadrant and around the crossroads, and then identifying potential locations for a parking deck, but also creating a parking management strategy for the interim. This framework diagram kind of has all of that stuff all on one map. The magenta-ish color is where new development is proposed. The dashed lines that are dark gray are street connections that were already in the regulating plan, and then the dark black streets are streets that we proposed in addition to those. And the reason being for that is that the more streets you have, the more you can reduce traffic congestion because drivers have more options and you don't have the stacking and backup with the same number of lanes as like larger arterials would have. We also did, as Tom mentioned earlier, a parking inventory. Our market consultants went around and counted spaces and verified them on aerial photographs based on the quadrant. This is just a map of where all of those are, and the numbers based on peak demand, which was based off of the restaurants. The parks and open space concept not only has those 2 parks that we've talked about on the vacant land, but it kind of, we looked at it as a whole system, as one large park when you start to include the schools and then Friendship Park on Birmingham and how they can all be connected by trails. And then the new development, as I said, is around the crossroads and mainly in the northeast quadrant. All of that follows the regulating plan, which was established in the last few years. And the majority around the crossroads is T5, and then basically everything else was T4 open. And the form-based code basically encourages low-density development and smaller building footprints, so it won't be like completely built out and really, really, really dense.
I think that's an important point that Sarah made, is that when we did the charrette, I did not necessarily pay attention to the code, so I got a little carried away and had a lot denser plan. But we really ratcheted it down to fit the code. That's so important. I mean, you spend a lot of time and money and effort on doing that, so we really wanted to make sure we were true to that code. So in the placemaking, what we really did come up with was mixed-use development, which follows the form-based code, as Sarah mentioned. The 2 new parks, the Crabapple Park at Birmingham being the much larger one, and then Mayfield Park on Mayfield. Short-term, long-term parking considerations, the on-street valet, and locations of potential deck. And that was a concern. I know all towns are struggling with parking, so a deck is a possibility, but we just got to figure out how you pay for something like that. And then the street enhancements, which we're going to show you in a few minutes in the trails system. So this slide really shows where we did focus on the whole development, the two parks and the two west and northeast quadrants. So in the northwest quadrant, we looked at, you could have more additional office space, additional townhomes, and another 18,000 square feet of mixed use was available. And so it really started to say, how can we now fill in what we have? We have already a design that's in place, and this plan really shows. You can see the new city hall in sort of the center of the slide, and then it really was just trying to create a streetscape on all the streets as opposed to just viewing into parking lots. So we added some additional townhouse product. We added some additional office, which makes a lot of sense adjacent to the city hall. Some additional townhouses in the upper north section of this plan, as well as the two additional buildings that are already under construction. And then we really looked at changing the Crab Apple Road, and that really is the most important part. It's you want to, I would assume that, because we've had this talk, is we want to be like Roswell, at least have that characteristic, or a downtown Decatur, or any of the smaller towns that are now starting to be successful, the Woodstocks of the world. You have it all in place. I mean, in actuality, it is really just tweaking the road, and then everything else is going to fall into place because private development will come to this. So this is one of those things. You make that change, and they will come. And be part of this. So this really just starts to strengthen up this quadrant. You can see today's street. We saw some young boys crossing the street one time we were out there. It is dangerous. The first time I came out here, I was shocked at how fast cars go up and down this road. So we need to slow them down if we're going to have a little small downtown section. This is an example of what could be done. I think I'm most excited because we have the opportunity to set the standard of type of bike trail systems in the Atlanta metro area. Atlanta, we voted for that tax, so we're going to get additional bike lanes in downtown Atlanta, but I don't think we can get them of the high quality that we're showing here. So I hope that this passes and we get to at least see these kind of facilities go in. We've added some parallel parking, so there's on-street parking, so people will start using the street entry into the building. It's just the natural fit for this area. On Heritage Walk, we would have liked to have changed that. We actually went pretty aggressively in changing it, but unfortunately it was too far down the pipeline under construction, so we show this as the existing. But, in the future, when time goes on, we would suggest that you might look at this as a alternate method where we could get some parallel parking in, some street trees, and additional paving. So Birmingham Highway is Ms. Sarah.
So these are some pictures of Birmingham Highway as it is today. The cars move pretty quickly. The sidewalks are fairly narrow and very close to the street. So as a pedestrian, it feels pretty unsafe as you're walking. Plus the sidewalks are a little disjointed in certain parts, particularly around the schools. So the street sections here work to make it much more intuitive. So this street section is 70 feet wide, and it starts at about the crossroads and then goes to the elementary school. And it includes the tree buffers, or the tree lawns, and then sharrows for bikes, on-street parking, and wider sidewalks on each side. And some of the width is made up by reducing the lane widths, which GDOT usually prefers 13 feet, and these are down to 11 feet lanes. But it would help really slow the traffic down and then help with the sidewalk width. This next one is 50 feet wide, and it's north of the elementary school and continues through the study area, but widens where necessary, like at the entrances to the high school and middle school. And again, here the sidewalks are a little bit wider. They're farther back from the edge of the street, and there are sharrows for the bikes. These will also help with getting into the potential Crabapple Park on Birmingham. And this one is about 21 acres, and it has mainly passive activities. And this is the plan of it, but it would have lawn areas, an amphitheater for small community events, internal trails, parking as needed, an orchard, community gardens, and then maintaining the woodlands on the northern edge and the stream and the stream buffer.
So the northeast and southeast quadrants. Again, this is the one that has the highest potential to complement the northwest section. But this is the important piece because we're adding potentially 6 new streets here. So that, again, starts to eliminate some of that traffic congestion along Mayfield and Crabapple. 1.4 miles of trails, and then the multi-use trail along Mayfield Road. The other potential is based on the zoning code. We can add 55 townhouses, 6 single-family, and 27 live-work type units with additional office and mixed-use type of development. And again, we're strictly following the code on that. So the overall plan just sort of shows the existing traffic circles going in again, and on the southern portion where Mayfield and Crabapple and Birmingham join, we've suggested another traffic circle at that point, and then a traffic circle at the eastern end of this project where it connects into the new Charlotte Drive extension. And then Charlotte Drive extension comes around on the northern side. So we're adding, this road system that really can start to have a positive impact on the whole area. The larger plan, and I think what I really want you all to see here in this plan is that we are very careful to think about even these footprints to keep them at a scale that is more relevant to the Crabapple area versus where we might put them in some other area. So they're much smaller building footprints. They're more expensive to build for a developer, but they certainly can create this character. This new street, which is just east of Birmingham, which runs the north-south, is one that we saw with no curbs. It could be a street that could be closed off. You could have lots of events on this. This could be a major small entertainment district on this side. We've created a lot of parking within the interior spaces faced with townhouses and mixed-use live-work type homes, with the street of Mayfield having, again, some retail on the bottom and some 2 additional floors above. We kept everything in the three-story level, so again, it feels very much like what's existing today that's being built as complementary, because this is the only place this is going to happen. So it really becomes your town center in the foreseeable and long-term future, which keeps it in a very nice human scale. I'm not going to go into the code analysis other than to say that this slide represents that we did follow it in the kind of densities that we were looking at. Mayfield Road is a 2-lane road. I'm very excited about this one too because we have we're really creating some standards, some first in the Atlanta metro area with bike lanes. This has a bike lane on the same side going both east and west, and which is so cool because then we have the road and then we have parallel parking on one side, and then the sidewalk on this east side is already going in. It's already, I think that one's already funded, right? Yeah, south side. Thank you, the south side. And then on the north side we have this new sidewalk and bike lane. So it could be something very special. And I think what's really cool about this is the way this whole design is evolving. You can bicycle within the whole core area, study area, and get around very, very safely for the children and adults within this area. We have a small park here, that the Mayfield Park Plan, and it really is taking advantage of the existing lake, adding a small amphitheater on this side, some community gardens and so forth on that. So now we're down to the parking summary. And again, I don't want to go into this. The most important thing is a structured deck costs a lot of money. It's about anywhere from $15,000 to $18,000 a space. So if there's any other method that we can solve before that, because normally it's the burden of the town to come up and help fund that type of deck, because a developer cannot pencil that out with the kind of development we're showing. It just won't work. I've tried it in a number of projects. We're struggling in Woodstock even, which is has a much larger basis, and we can't make it work in Woodstock at the moment. So if there is an option as we go through there, it could be the valet parking. We're not valet experts, so we're suggesting these stars where valet stations might be. You know, it's hard to say this now, but in 10 years we'll probably be having Uber or something that drives us around without anybody in the car, frighten the heck out of me because I'll be really old then. But you know, at least for now, we can have a valet, and I think that would work very well. So it's really, if the town decides to go with this, you want to contract with them. They do this. They come work all the logistics out to make something like this work. There's a lot of shared parking availability. But if you don't want to go with that, we do have a parking deck, as I said, suggested in this particular plan if we needed to go that way.
The implementation strategy is based more on the project type rather than a phase, because a lot of this could be fairly concurrent. The first part is the valet parking that Tom was just talking about, and this chart just essentially lays out the steps to make each of these individual projects happen. First part is, you know, finding a valet company, making or coordinating with tenants and seeing the best locations to place them, and then, you know, unroll it. The second set of projects are the streetscapes and enhancements, and a lot of that will be determining if you need to acquire right-of-way to make some of the enhancements, and then it just goes by each street and what changes need to be made. And each of them are coded by the numbers on the map. The third set of projects are the parks and trails. The Mayfield Park may be easier to build first, depending on you know, the availability of land and, you know, ownership and those kinds of things. And then eventually, after the two parks are built, the trails connecting them and the schools would be good. And then the next set is the parking deck feasibility. So ideally, with the valet parking, there would be some form of metrics set up to determine, you know, how successful the program is, and if, in fact, a deck is needed. So then you would go into the feasibility study for a parking deck, and then determine how to do the cost structure. And then finally, the new street construction, which are the new streets that we showed in the plan, both the ones that were already in the regulating plan, and then the ones that we suggested on our master plan. The first steps that could be done to make all of this happen is, one, the valet parking, two, the policy changes. The main one for this is, if you want those new streets that we suggested, it would be a good idea to get them in the regulating plan to make sure that developers follow the plan in place, and it really allows for a lot of flexibility in terms of development in the future and sets the basis for the structure. And then acquiring land and right-of-way as needed, or coordinating with property owners. And then, as I said, a lot of things could be done concurrently. We left the development as, you know, separate, because it will be market-driven, and it's usually done by private developers. So those could happen basically at any time.
So, summing up, recently we're going after a project and I went to the town where they filmed The Walking Dead. And what was so fascinating about that, I don't know if any of you have been down there, but instantly when I got down there, I thought about Crabapple, and that the town they've done such a great job architecturally. It's only 2 blocks. It's just, you know, you come in, you have a block that intersects, and then you go to another block and you're out of the town again. And what was so neat about it was that they have strict controls, because I couldn't tell the new versus the old. And what also got to me was they were building a bunch of housing in that space, in a number of spaces there. So they get it. They understand that this is, you know, people want to live in that kind of environment, that downtown environment. And there are a number of people that live in Crabapple that if there's the right kind of housing product that developed, you're going to have those residents want to move and stay in Crabapple and not leave. I mean, I'm the same way. I want to stay in the Virginia Highlands, so I have a place now that I can do that without having to drive around, and I have 3 stores to go, grocery stores to go shop at. So I'm hoping that this is a strong, and you all feel this is a strong plan and a good direction. It is a very important one, in my opinion, because everyone's running out of town. We've been in a very strong development mode for the last 4 or 5 years. We have a couple more years. There'll be some turn down. Hopefully not like it was in 2009, but there will be, and it'll be a slowdown. But after that, it'll be back up again. So you're in that mode. You can control the quality by hopefully accepting this plan. So the next one is any revisions based on any comments tonight that we need to make. We'll certainly welcome. We'd be happy to do that, and then it'll be considered for adoption in February. So with that, we thank you.
All right. I'm going to open up for public comment before we get into questions.
Does anyone else want to, we have a couple of public comment sheets. Is anyone else interested in making public comment tonight? If so, I would encourage you to fill out a yellow sheet up there and turn it in. But we do have 2.
Okay. All right. So we have Michael Dempsey.
Good evening. My name is Michael Dempsey. I live at 2113 McFarland Lane in Milton. It's part of the Brayburn neighborhood. I'm the president of the Brayburn Townhome Association, so I'm here also representing our HOA. I've been to the charrettes. I've seen this presentation probably 4 times, I think. Each time I've expressed some concerns with various members of TSW, members of Milton. I've made phone calls to Michelle Ross and to Robin McDonald, spoke to Carter Lucas and Chief Krokoff about this. My specific concern, I think there's some great stuff in this overall plan, but as it affects my neighborhood, Brayburn Townhome specifically, we have an alley in the back of our property which we use to access our townhomes, and the back of our property faces the new City Hall, and couldn't be happier with City Hall. Looks really great. It's coming along nice, very good architecture and everything like that. On Lacoma Trace, which is kind of goes on the side of City Hall there, if you know we're on the new City Hall where they have there's a little smaller building on the back of the main City Hall. That's closest to my residence and the residents on the odd side of McFarland Lane. It's a very narrow strip. We have a density. We have 2-story townhomes along our lane. Our elevation is about 14 feet lower, at least, than the elevation where City Hall is, significantly lower. I've talked to Tom. I asked him about the plan because I looked at it, and it affected us when I think he's got 22 townhomes going in along the alley. They're called, he mentioned they're called back alley loaded, I believe. And I know a little bit about the form-based code with respect to that. It requires that the garage be on the rear of the property, not on the facing City Hall. So I asked him, I said, how do you propose getting vehicles to those townhomes? They're 3-story as I guess somehow envisioned. And he said, oh, we would use that alley that's there. Well, the alley is owned by our townhome association, and we're not interested in having more traffic on that alley. There's children that play. We have white picket fence and very small yards on that alley, but we have little kids that are running out, and to put 21 more townhomes for an alley that right now is servicing 12 townhomes and is pretty much maxed out. It's a very narrow alley. The garbage trucks have a difficult enough time coming in there, taking the garbage away. And the idea of having 3-story townhomes that will already be a whole level above our ground level, so they'd be basically 4-story from our perspective. I think Tom mentioned that they would be there'd be drive-under garages facing us, 3 stories, and then the front of them would be facing City Hall. It's just, it would detract from our value. We would be adversely affected that way because I also understand on the form-based code that they can build right on the property line. They don't have setbacks. So we have landscaping all along a berm that goes up that elevated area. I spoke to Carter Lucas about this, and he negotiated with John Whelan Homes, who built our neighborhood, and negotiated the sale of the land so that Heritage Walk could be put in there. And he said his understanding was that John Whelan was going to just, there was only a very tiny little piece of property there. They were going to use that for some kind of basically just green space, not really being used. But there's also another owner, another entity that owns a larger portion of the area more toward Itasca, SHF Crabapple, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and we're concerned that one or both of these entities will utilize some tricks, kind of like in the covenants, where they can put driveways and so forth into our landscaped areas to access these townhomes. I know they would probably like to maximize the value of that property that's up there because it's a very small piece of property, and it kind of seems like the way this planning is going, they're trying to pack everything possible you can into a smallest area to maximize profit, and it would be at our expense. So our neighborhood is almost unanimous. The people that are aware of this are unanimously opposed to it and don't want to disturb it. We like looking at City Hall. We'd be happy to have either a greenway coming by there, even a parking lot, not a parking deck, but a parking lot. I see all the people working there. I look outside my upstairs window and I see all the construction workers and everybody, and they're on the same level. I'm looking straight at them and they're looking at me. We accept that. We just don't want to have some towering 3-story edifice looking down on us, blocking out. We will have no view of the City Hall or anything. We would have this long, they're all pretty much contiguous townhomes. And I just, I brought it up several times to Tom and at the meetings, and I haven't seen the plans change any. I thought these charrettes and the town halls and stuff were to hone this plan and see if maybe a modification of it. And, you know, I haven't seen any modifications at all, including the fact that, like on the plan, it shows a roundabout in front of the Shell station there, which I understand that's no-go now, but it's still in the rendering. So I don't really know what we're voting on tonight. I think there's some great stuff. I like the trails. I like the park stuff. I like the transportation. Their new road improvements will be fantastic. But I really want to represent our neighborhood and not see us get kind of bulldozed, literally, with a bunch of back alley loaded townhomes that are hovering above us. So I appreciate your consideration in this portion of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kay Dempsey.
Hi, I'm Kay Dempsey. That's what I was going to say. 2131 McFarland Lane. So, don't live at the same place as he. Same last name. Don't ask. Anyway, I'm coming at it. He did a great job in, setting the foundation, and I'm just trying to give you a different perspective, or just as somebody who moved here 3.5 years ago, and bought for this to be my last home, my permanent home. I moved from a big place in East Cobb and downsized to what I planned on being my permanent home because I'm close to my daughter and my grandchildren. And at the time, I was very aware of the future zoning plans as well. I knew about City Hall. Like Mike said, I have no problems with that. However, I was told, and I know this was, by a real estate agent, but I was told that the strip that was behind my townhouse was going to be a green space. And so I was really surprised when this, as this process has gone forward, and I saw the plan for these 3-story townhouses that are directly behind, and I do mean directly behind my house. And I have thoroughly enjoyed my small backyard. I have a dog. I have a little white picket fence. I enjoy looking out right now at my berm that, is landscaped. I mean, it's not even fancy, but just kind of it's got pine straw and some trees. But the idea that there would be, and like Mike said, there's already this elevation of, 13, 14 feet, and then you're talking about 3 stories above that, they would literally be looking down on me all the time, into my windows, into my backyard, into anything that I do. The alley is quite narrow as it is. I have to park at an angle in my driveway in order to get in and out. So the idea that, it's not feasible that the alley would work as it is for 30 more townhouses. But more importantly, the quality of life. I feel like I came here with the expectation I was going to be in an area where I could walk to restaurants, where I would interact with neighbors, and I've loved every bit of it. And I feel like as this process has gone on, it's like Mike has said, we've tried to participate in the modifications. We haven't seen any modifications. The plan has stayed the same month after month after month. And I have a file of all the new form-based code and the placemaking or placeholding, I can't even remember what it's called. But every time it looks the same. And I keep thinking, okay, where's my input? Where do I count as a new resident, a taxpayer, somebody that actually does live in the heart of Crabapple? So I would appreciate your consideration and think of it from your perspective if you would like to look out your back window and see a towering townhouse where you used to see some pine trees. So thank you very much.
That's all the public comment.
That's it. If there's no more public comment, we'll close public comment. But I would like to, I guess, if y'all come up, ask questions and stuff, because based on what they're saying is y'all did this based on what's in the form-based code, correct? So, the consultants did was actually currently allowed by right in the development. So I think a lot of the concerns we're hearing is more with the ordinance itself and the code. And so that is something that if you would like change, would highly recommend going to mayor and council and getting them to change the actual form-based code, because as it is right now, the landowner is going to develop as they can. Yeah, so I think that was my question on the apartments, because I got a lot of phone calls about that, was y'all were just doing it as what the code states today, correct?
Yeah, it's what the code states, and then in any developer that comes in is going to look at the code.
Right.
And I've gotten a lot of calls too from development groups, and they're looking at the plan that I guess is public now, and they're saying, is this what we can do? And we say yes, it's basic code, because they're basing, what I guess they'll negotiate with whatever landowners they're negotiating with. So we only took the code and implemented it. So I mean, yeah, that's
Okay.
all that can be done.
Quick question with the I have a TDR question. These when you were doing this, I'm assuming this is the by right density and not the TDR density that could be allowed, correct? Oh no, okay.
We mainly looked at the northeast quadrant in this spreadsheet here.
Okay.
But a lot of them basically it's smack in the middle.
Oh, okay. So this is okay, because have we had any? I guess we haven't really had any TDR.
Not for Crabapple.
Not
Yeah,
for
like
Crabapple,
there are key
because
points down there.
what
There's
happens
some
is the
TDR
parking
used.
that limits the density we're
Okay.
finding.
Okay.
Say that again, Kathy, I'm sorry.
The parking requirements limit the amount of square footage. So because they're small parcels, you know, Crabapple has a lot of 1 acre or 2 acre
Right.
parcels, and so you have to fit not only the building, but you've got to fit the parking requirement on it. And when you do that, you know, we rarely find anyone that can max out the density because just too many parking spaces are needed for restaurants or retail.
Kathy, when we did the original plan for Crabapple, before we adopted the form-based code, do you remember what the commercial versus residential allowed square footage for development was back then? For some reason, I've got like 120,000 square feet
That was
sticks
that
in
was
my
the
mind.
original one way back,
Yeah.
where we actually limited the amount of, I think it was 100 or 125,000 of commercial, if you
Okay.
remember.
Yep.
It actually limited it
Yep.
by use.
Right.
And
I know we
so-
changed that.
And we changed that to make a more mixed-use, walkable community. So, and we used the form-based code to do that.
And so how much do you have an impression as to, or any detail on, as to how much of that is actually developed today with what's on the ground or about to be completed, if you count the expansion of the buildings that are under construction today?
No, I'd really have to go back and look at it. I can tell you that the buildings we're seeing coming in are mixed use, clearly, with the combination, and with retail, the second floor office and the third floor lofts, that's the type of thing that we're seeing. We've got one that's coming through very soon, and then of course you've got the Orkin buildings, Adam Orkin's 2 buildings that are under construction, and those are 3 stories, and that's clearly going to be mixed use.
Yeah.
The third floor may be office, maybe lofts. I mean, I think the option is there, and it's market driven.
Yeah.
On that, do they have to do for rent, or does it have to be for sale?
We don't discern. Alpharetta discerns rental from condo for apartments or lofts or whatever. We do not discern ownership. We just discern use.
Okay, do you have any idea what the footprint is of either one of those 2 new buildings that Adam's building?
What do you mean in terms of
Yeah, so is it a 15,000 square foot?
It's the
footprint?
max, which is what, 18,000? I think we can allow up to 80. So there's 2 18,000 square foot buildings with an elevator in the middle that will service both buildings.
Okay, so if you round up to 20, and it's 3 stories each,
Yeah.
so it's 60,000 square foot per
Right.
building, so it's 120 for the total.
Right.
So we're about at what, with those 2 buildings, about what we had originally, before the form-based code, had talked about in terms of.
Well, that was way back when, that's
Yeah.
right. I mean,
I'm
that
just
was.
trying to draw a comparison.
Yeah, very old plan, and that limited, that was zoning by use, and,
Yeah.
we're getting away from that.
Yeah,
and,
I'm not
Right.
even gonna go there, but,
Yeah.
and then, I know in the presentation made this evening, it's showing the proposed development. Do you know what the total square footage is that is proposed today, if we take all the things that Tom and Sarah have talked about tonight, that is commercial, not residential?
I don't, Sarah, have you done those calculations? Or I think you just did it for the Northwest. Did you do it for the rest as well, or?
I did everything.
Okay.
This slide shows all of it.
Good.
Okay. Is it in our packet? I don't,
Should be, but if not, I can just read them all for you. Office is about 72,000.
72?
Yeah. Mixed use is approximately 104,000. Retail is close to 20,000.
And that's all based on your market study as well, to show that the market would allow that as well.
Yeah, it would have to be
Market
phased.
demand.
Yes,
Yeah.
market demand. Yes.
That's phased over a period of years.
Yes.
Yep. So it's about 196,000, not counting residential.
Right. Now, that could be, mix and match. That's the way that the zoning is written, so that you could use housing units rather than square footage for office or retail.
Yep. And then, Tom and Sarah, in the plan that you guys have contemplated, how much of that today, I know we talked about it's classified as, goes back to that question I had earlier for you guys, where it was townhome flats versus something else. How much of that could be apartments? Thank you. Is that, and we talked about that, that's the stacked flats with parking lots, that's the primarily the apartments?
Yeah.
True, I know we talked about just a minute ago, Kathy, with that we don't discern use for ownership based on whether it's a condo that could be rented versus an apartment. But I'm just thinking about true apartments as we might think of them in other parts of town.
Well, don't forget, you have a density limit. And so to do apartment, in an apartment building, you'd really have to assemble a lot of these small little lots in order to do it. And that's a big stumbling block.
Because I think in the article that either was written by, or put out by the city, or was done by one of the local papers, it talked about 300 apartments. Is that a number
That's
out
over
there?
a 5-year. That's phased.
Right, I understand phase, but I just want to get to the total.
You could have as much as
whether it happens tomorrow or happens 5 years from now.
The market study is saying that's what it could absorb, but that's not what the code's saying it can do. See, there's two. You have to separate that. This is just saying here's what you could possibly do because of the demand. But if you start applying the code, you're not going to get that.
Okay.
Right.
Because as Peyton's already noted, I mean, one of the things that we get the phone calls about it is going to be apartments. 'Cause it has a big impact on traffic, it has a big impact on parking in our schools.
And it's Tom is exactly right. You know, yes, there's a big demand. Look at Avalon. I mean, there's your demand right there, and you could easily replicate that. But we don't have the space. We have space for lofts over offices. I mean, that's really what we're looking at.
Yeah. And I think people will be far less alarmed by that than they are when we hear the number 300.
What's extraordinary is that a normal rent in downtown or in midtown or Virginia Highland, a normal rent is about $1.85 a square foot. You could get $235 or $225, $230 square foot in a loft or apartment here because of the demand and the quality that it would be done. This is going to be not quite up to the Avalon, but very close to what Avalon. And you're probably going to get more of a millennial type looking for this versus buy if you can even get rent. But you can't get 300 units in the stuff that we did here. It just isn't possible.
So just to make sure I understand that number correctly, then you're saying that in a phased period of time, there could be the demand for that much residential use, whether it's apartment or loft or something else, for 300 units, whatever unit type that might be.
And whatever developer feels he or she can absorb in this market. But they can't do it even in this plan right here or the other side.
So that's the part that I want to make sure I understand completely, because that's the in our face that we're going to get from the community. And we either have to be able to talk intelligently about it, to talk about if there's an upside that we measure as a city that's going to be good for us, or defend something if it's perceived as unhealthy for where we're trying to go. I think this is a great plan. I think there's
we need to make sure that that's very evident in our narrative. If it's not, we need to go back and review it.
It was kind of misleading on the quote.
Yeah, and that's what we've got the most attention from so far.
I will say that all the plans that have come in, all the developers that have come in so far in our discussions on Crabapple have really been mixed-use projects. We have one single-family home coming in, as a matter of fact. I just got a variance the other day. But most everything else, I mean, we do have some stack flats. There's a project that's sort of stalled, but who wants to do, but there'll be condominiums. But other than that, everything else is mixed use.
Because the way the code reads, to do apartments, you have to have 50% commercial in it.
That's, yeah, and, yeah.
Right? I mean, that's how the Deerfield.
Well, no, let's
it's
see.
not the
No,
same.
it's not the
Oh,
same.
yeah.
Yeah, take it back, yeah.
And I would also say that we've had multiple developers look at senior housing or senior living, independent living, and they can't get it to work. Even if they did 20.
At a higher density.
At a higher density.
Which you're allowed.
Right.
Even at 20 units an acre,
They can't get it to work.
they couldn't get it to work.
Because
You-
the property values are so high and they just can't make the numbers work.
And
so.
you just don't have that much land. I mean, and you need parking. All those things come in, and so basically, we're building a village, and that was how the code was written, and,
Yeah.
and I think that's really what we're saying.
Well, I want to make sure that, and it sounds like whether we intended it or not, some of our code is providing some unanticipated protections. And as long as there isn't somebody smarter than our code that comes in and says, here's how I'm going to beat it, we're probably okay.
I've tried to a couple times and you can't.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had one loophole we found, and we're correcting it. About the underground parking, there was no
Right.
limit on
How
the
deep
density
you
of units. So we've corrected that, but that's all we've seen so far.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I had a question about the whole valet parking idea. I mean, is that something that's in another local city? Is anybody else doing it? Is it working?
Well, I'll give you the context of, and it's probably about the same size, maybe a little bigger, is Inman Village. Are you where along the Beltline in Inman Park? That's valet park. The whole thing is basically valet parking or Uber, and it's been very, very successful there. That's the only one I can think of. Again, we're not experts in this. This would be something that we're suggesting that you at least explore before you go to other options. And it will only help if when the east side is built out, because there's more density and more probably profitability for a valet to come in and do sides like this.
So then what's the alternative if we don't do the valet parking idea?
Well, you do have the surplus of parking. There is a shared parking. The downside is that somebody might have to walk for 2 minutes, which in my neighborhood is nothing. So I walk to Ponds Market.
Hey, when you should have come up before, it's like, I would walk from
I mean,
high school down to
nothing. This area, you can't park anywhere and be somewhere within that magic moment of 5 minutes. It's all within a 5-minute walking distance. So you could park anywhere here and not need the valet parking. It's just, is there such a demand? I mean, individual restaurants might do their own valet. I mean, in the end, we're suggesting, if there's restaurants or establishments that are so popular, they can do it. And what you could do is help them find the surplus of parking, and they could negotiate with those offices, for instance, that leave at 5 o'clock and so forth. So I think that's one way. And then the third option is considering a deck, and that's when you have to figure out how to raise the money, because again, a developer cannot, and there's nothing in here that we've designed that would pencil a deck out, because you really need a lot of, decks are paid through condominiums or apartments, but you need 200 or 300 apartments to make a deck work. The one in Woodstock that we did is a 1-level deck, and it penciled out because there was enough density of apartments within that project. So that worked in a small town, but if you try to get a 400 deck per car deck, that 15,000, that goes up pretty fast. So I think it's going to be a real push to do that, but you have the space and the place to do it if you can figure the financials out.
And I saw on your slide, that one slide where it says the 715 parking spaces, and it says they're likely to be vacant during peak restaurant hours.
Yes.
So can you explain that, why?
Well, they're office space, and so office space tends to leave at 5 o'clock.
Restaurant hours, evening
evening
time, not like
so
lunchtime.
when restaurants are gearing up, offices are leaving. It's the perfect shared scenario for parking.
Okay, so it's evening, because I didn't know if that meant lunchtime. I was wondering. Okay.
You don't get that kind of peak restaurant. Most people can find spaces during lunch. It's the evening one that you're looking for, the Friday, Saturday night crowd.
And then in the study, I guess, has it been kind of analyzed in terms of like how many people are coming into this area from the outskirts of Milton or other cities, in terms of like how many people are coming in and potentially, are you looking at parking for mainly the people that are going to be living in this area that are kind of working in here, living in here, or is it really also encompassing, people coming in to this area to come here for a destination for a night or something?
Yeah, we'd have to go back to the report and look at that. It skips my mind how the marketing people did that. I'm sure they took in the context of data that how it's being used, and I don't know if they looked at zip codes or not, or if they talked to the establishments. I can't answer that without them here.
Any other questions?
Is there anything that prohibits somebody from buying a property and putting in a parking deck that they could charge and maybe making it feasible?
That I wish that no, they could do it right where we suggested, but it won't. They can't. It won't pencil out. I work with developers on a regular basis trying to get decks in and pro forma them. It is extraordinarily difficult in the first line. I mean, we did at Glenwood Park. We tried to put a deck in, we couldn't pencil it out. It's just, they'd rather surface park it, and I think you have to take in consideration with the future. Even in this area, Uber is going to become a pretty, and Lyft will be used for most of these establishments. I mean, that's what we use exclusively. My wife and I, we don't ever drive our car anymore because we might have a drink and we don't want to be on the road. So I think in a development like this, you're going to get Uber and other ways of doing that. So I don't think you're. And this second phase, this parking there is a lot of parking we added into this second design. I'm hoping that there's somebody assembling a large piece of this land. I've heard rumors of it. So if that's true, this is basically, they're going to have to follow some sort of plan like this. It might not be ours, but it'll have to be similar to that. And you should get a lot of parking there.
And this is the most up-to-date plan, right? Because I know there was
Yeah.
a comment about potentially something with the roundabout where Shell Station, you were saying?
No, that roundabout is there. This plan is a long-term plan, right? The Shell station's doesn't anticipate closing down tomorrow or next year, as we see it. But at some point, somebody's going to offer that person enough money, and if we have this traffic circle in place as a plan, then the potential buyer is going to know that, so they can factor that into their cost of negotiations. We want that traffic circle to be there when that Shell station, and we want it in the plan so the city can say, when you buy this, we want this implemented.
Any other questions? Okay. So yes, you want us to make a formal vote? Because I think
Yes, that would be nice.
I think it's important for the community to know that this is not set in stone, because it's, at the end of the day, the landowner, even though it might say mixed use, the landowner say, the numbers only work for me to build townhomes, and that's what's going to be built. That you don't have any say over that.
Right, that's right,
It's
we
really
don't.
what the code says, and so that's important to where if people have any issues with what the code says, I highly recommend, calling up your council member and seeing if you can get it.
That's right. This is just a concept to show what could be.
Right.
But at the end of the day, as you said, Peyton, it's up to the individual landowner, using the current zoning ordinance, which is in place, which we refer to as the regulating plan. That's what he'll be using to do the development.
And it probably won't actually be the individual landowner today. It'll be the landowner that turns it to
That's right.
the
The
development
buyer, the
community.
developer.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yes.
All right, any other discussion? All right, I'll vote for a motion.
I move we accept the downtown Milton Crabapple placemaking plan as presented by staff and the consulting team.
All right, any other, a second?
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your role on the stakeholder committee, too.
Thank you.
Yes.
Glad we had an old blind dog.
A stumble. example of that.
That wasn't the one I was able to attend.
Yeah.
Uber.
Did a bar crawl as you guys went through all this?
Never, Chris.
Uh-huh.
All right, what's up next?
Okay, the next item is RZ 17-01, consideration to amend AG1 Agricultural District Development Standards in Section 64-416 of Chapter 64 of the zoning ordinance. So, the purpose of this text amendment is to correct the portion of the rural view shed stating that all lots either in a minor subdivision or a single lot of record are subject to architectural review by the city architect, but are not subject to the requirements of the rural view shed that a subdivision are required to meet. So when this was passed earlier or at the end of last year, that was always the intent, but there was some ambiguity to it, so we have fixed it to make it more clear. So we're just cleaning this up. There's nothing new about it. There's nothing dramatic. It's just reiterating what the intent was.
So if I can just piggyback, so basically we excluded minor subdivisions and single lots from the rural viewshed requirements, but we did not intend to exclude minor subdivisions and single-family lots from architectural review. So we needed to clarify that to make sure that everyone understood. You don't have to do the rural viewshed requirement, but you're still under the architectural review requirement when you're on an exterior street. That's what this is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what came out of the council meeting. So
Okay.
You mind if I-
Okay, go.
One of the things, if you go back to the conversations that we've had about it, that I still have heartburn over is the lack of requirement for them to follow the rural viewshed requirements. And I know the mayor and council have already given you guys direction on that.
You're talking about for minor subdivisions in the single family?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Because a minor subdivision or minor plat is less than 4 units, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And is there a limitation on the acreage, a minimum or a maximum limitation on the acreage for that?
Well, that's going to be driven by whatever zoning district you're in, and 85% of our zoning district is AG1, so you'd have to have minimum 1 acre.
1 acre,
So
right.
yeah.
But
So
what about the other end of the spectrum? So if somebody decided they wanted to do a minor plat, so it's three up to 3 homesteads,
Mhm.
and each of those is 3 to 5 acres. So just let's
Yeah,
say
you
it's
could do
3.
as many as you want to. I mean, the acreage could be 10 acres each. It
Right.
could be 20 acres
And if you're on a
each.
gravel road, it'd have to be 3 acres.
Right,
Right.
I know that, yeah, which is great, but that's, the gravel road part of the viewshed, to a certain extent, has already got the protections that I'm worried about, that we're
Okay.
losing with where we're going with this. 'Cause I'm more concerned about some of the roadways that we've established as our rural viewshed area, that if somebody were to buy a larger parcel, and it's got a larger frontage, and they decided to do larger estate lots, they could build large homes, and they don't have to abide by the rural viewshed. And suddenly, what you or I might perceive as protected, as natural as like it is today, could be taken away. It could be destroyed, just like we experienced over on Freemanville with the Nix Road development, where we all had an expectation of it being protected, and all of a sudden it's gone. I mean, we know the reasons that happened, but so have we contemplated the larger lot scenario in that? I know we talked about 1 acre lots minimums, and we've talked about some smaller plat scenarios, but in the mayor and council discussions, I know we didn't talk about larger plats, because that's why I'm bringing it up again, because I would have felt like we had done it justice if we had had a conversation about the potential impact that had not been contemplated with larger lot developments. Did the mayor and council have any discussion along those lines?
No. I
I
mean, they
mean,
were pretty adamant that
we-
they wanted to leave this alone.
And
Oh, I know, but they
But no, there was
adamant
no
without necessarily the
conversation
benefit
whether
of that
it
kind of
was-
conversation,
but
that
there was-
making sure we've measured all the scenarios that could impact that.
That wasn't brought up,
Yeah,
whether it's 1
okay.
acre or 5 acres.
Because when
or
we
whatever.
passed it, it was for everything.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
for all lots, and then they wanted to. you know,
But there was never any
exclude it.
discussion
So-
to,
Right, and
Yeah.
that's how we ended up with what we've got, along with the adjustments that we're being asked to make
Correct,
tonight.
correct.
So all I'm doing is sort of re-engaging that conversation with one more flag to take to the hill, potentially, to say, look, you guys, I know we've talked about this ad nauseum, but there's maybe one more scenario I'd like you guys to think about, and that is, in a larger estate lot scenario, you could be taking out more linear roadway than we expected, than if it were developed on a smaller scale plat, or, you know, a minor plat.
I mean, I think that's a very good point, and I think that's something to where, if, you know, if y'all could bring that up to council, and if they, I mean, I don't know, I mean, it's worth it, I mean, because I don't think they, I mean, but, because I remember watching the meeting, and they were very adamant they did not
Oh, yeah.
want
Yeah.
to.
Yep.
But I don't know if they, but that wasn't brought up, and I don't know, it might be just worth it for them to maybe,
We can make that part of
Yeah,
our,
just-
our report,
Yeah,
you
just
know,
say-
and, just, so, we're happy to pass
we
that on,
just
sure.
respectfully would say.
Yeah, no, I
Take a look at that. That's-
Yes.
so now when I do when we do the memo, I kind of
Right.
track how everything is, and I do
Yeah.
a report on what you all had recommended,
Yeah,
whether.
we'll include
so-
that.
And I
We'll
may
include
be
that.
the only one who feels that way,
No,
but
Is-
you
are you
make a
all-
very,
yeah.
you make a very good
Because
point.
what's the burden on the landowner to comply with the view shed requirement?
It's not huge.
Exactly.
The burden,
Yeah.
so I think with mayor and council, and I could be speaking way off here, but I believe the burden is for the person who has like the 3 acres or like the 2.7,
Single lot.
yeah, the 2.7 that wanna make it two single lots. That view shed might cut into their yield, but like for Paul's scenario, where they're already gonna do the bigger lots and it's not even gonna affect their property,
Yeah.
you know, and, I mean, it makes,
it's just,
and then that wasn't brought up, that scenario was not brought up.
good,
So, yeah,
and that's it. When it came to mind, it was like, oh, shoot, we didn't talk about this at all that I remembered. And, you know, I'm at a landmark point in my life where I know that there are things that I forget, and I make sure that we talk about that in an unanticipated scenario. Because we've done the city has done great work in creating the sense of place. And we did some more great work this week with the tree ordinance with Connie here this week to talk about canopy and whatever. And so we're absolutely doing the homework to put those protections in place. And I think that without the contemplation of another scenario with how the linear raping of that could take place without it. It's just an unintended consequence.
Mm-hmm.
It's just completely contrary to all the rest of the things that we're working so hard to do. And that's why I absolutely would appreciate if you guys would engage the mayor and council in it with the understanding that I totally get where they're going with the smaller yield lots, and I buy into that scenario. Where I think it has risk is if we're talking about a larger scenario, a larger lot scenario, where they're not held to the same standard because it is, by interpretation, a minor plat subdivision or minor plat development, and all of a sudden, that foliage is gone, and the view shed has been forever changed. So, thank you for that part.
Any other discussion?
Why don't we just craft it the way we want to do it, and
Because this
take
is-
it out?
This isn't really about that.
Yeah, it's not about that.
Okay.
It wasn't presented
Yeah.
to the community that way. But I appreciate your effort
Yeah.
to go.
Worst case, they can say no.
Yeah, we'll definitely report it to them and
Yeah.
suggest.
Yeah.
Unless there's any more debate, I would be happy to make a motion
All right.
for this.
Open up for a motion.
I move we approve RZ 17-01, the consideration to amend AG1 agricultural district development standards in section 64-416 of chapter 64 of the zoning ordinance to read as staff has proposed, with, if you would please, the caveat that you would make the presentation about the consideration of larger acreage, single plat subdivisions.
Will do.
Thank you.
Have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And last one.
Yeah, last Last one is consideration to amend the process of plat procedures, Chapter 50 of the City Code subdivisions. So here, this proposed text amendments would require that all preliminary plats be reviewed and approved or denied by the City of Milton Planning Commission. By requiring this process, the public will receive notice via the legal organ notification sign and site on the site and adjacent property owners. So there's a problem, that's the intent, but it wasn't included in this draft, the scenario of the notification. And then lastly, we've figured out, or I figured out, that we need to take out the reference to, right now in AG1, we require when somebody submits what we can now call a concept plan or LDP, that they go and have a public meeting before they continue on through the land disturbance permit. So the problem is it's conflicting, so if we approve this and not take that out, then it leaves us not in a good position. So actually, we're recommending that we defer this till March, but we're more than happy to walk through the rest of it if you'd like to discuss any questions or issues or suggestions. That's where we are.
And there's one more piece, and that and it will be a code change, and it will follow along as well. It's not a text amendment, it's in our code, but
Oh, that's right, yeah.
we have to give you the authority. You currently only have authority to make recommendations. You don't have authority to approve or reject. So we have to give you that authority. So we're preparing that code change.
And that's easier, it's just an administration, so that could have gone concurrently with this, but
Yeah.
since we
So
found
we can
that
just
out.
reject plats all day long? There's no- I'm just being curious.
Well, I mean,
There has to be some sort of.
we do have a basis. It is in here. It's defined.
Has to be
But
grounds for it.
so in any event, we have a current process in place, and so we need to create a text amendment that deletes that current process and then allows you to take over. So that's what's
Yeah.
going to hold up this.
There was just one spot, Kathy, and I don't remember where it was when I was reading it. Or maybe I just found it by chance. Yeah, on page 6, under section 50-44A, where you have made some amendments, where it says shall be considered by the director or the planning commission as appropriate. Will there be more definitive things that are added to that would determine when it is you versus when it is us? Because right now, just the "or" doesn't necessarily imply that there's.
Well, if you go on,
a line of
it
demarcation.
really, I get the authority for the minor plats, and then you get the authority for the major plats, and so that gets,
It's just covering both.
it's covering both at this
Okay,
point. And
I
then it
didn't
gets
read it
further
that way.
defined as you go on. It makes it clear that I'm only doing minor and you're doing the major.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't read it that way.
Yeah.
All right. Then it makes sense to me.
Yeah, so that was my question. So would be major plats for us.
Right.
Right,
Only
anything more
minor.
than 3 lots.
Right.
Okay. Because the way that first page that it said will require that all preliminary plats be reviewed and approved or denied by the City of Milton Planning Commission.
Which
On the
word-
on the initial, this proposed text amendment will require.
Oh, on my
that's
initial, I'm sorry.
Robin.
That's
Yeah,
me, yes.
That's Robin.
Well, and that's all, and I meant, yeah.
That should be corrected.
Yeah.
It
All
should be
major.
All
just
major.
major.
Yeah. Okay.
Where was that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
It
right.
was just
Oh, in
the-
It's on her memo.
My
Yeah,
memo.
in the memo. Should be all major.
Right.
You want this deferred till when? March?
Till March, your March meeting, because I have to do a CZIM, which I'll advertise next week for
Okay.
the end of February, and then it'll go to you in March.
The only other thing I had was on page 7, under 50, section 50-49. Again, it's where the blue highlighting is. It's just a wordsmithing thing. Did you intend it to say after the approval of the mayor and city council's confirmation? Isn't it saying the same thing? Approval and the confirmation. It wouldn't,
Yeah, I have that too. Should be like by
the mayor and
city's
council,
and city
council's
council,
confirmation.
Oh, by the, yes, rather than of. Very good. Where's Fred tonight? We didn't, you're,
Your
Beach Boys.
substitute, yeah.
right.
And then then it also in that same page, section 50-49, do we want to add where it says residential subdivision building permit issued only after approval, by mayor and city council of the final plat, or of final plat.
Yeah. By would be correct. So
Would you read the sentence in?
Well, but the problem is, I think that this is in generality, residential subdivision building permit issued only after approval of final plat, whether that was a minor plat or whether it was a major plat. And so again, it goes in two different directions, and so this is more of a general.
But then who would be
So it depended.
approving?
So, the mayor and city council does a confirmation to everything, whether it's a minor plat, but
Yeah.
Kathy does the approval of the minor plat, you guys do the approval of the regular plats, and then after that's done, it goes to council for confirmation.
Right. Preliminary
All of them.
plats, we're doing preliminary plats.
Right.
Then, once the preliminary plats are approved.
Oh, I'm sorry, final plats.
And then when it goes for final plat, the council does the final plat.
After the subdivision's built, I'm sorry. So, this is speaking of a final plat, which is different than a preliminary plat.
Okay, so I think Smeet's point is still valid.
Yeah.
He's saying, in residential subdivisions, I think this is the way you're intending for it to read. In residential subdivisions, building permits may be issued on the basis of any approved final plat.
Right.
Only after the approval by the mayor and city council's confirmation.
But I'm actually talking
Well,
about,
I'm-
so that first one, the first
Oh,
sentence.
there, above
Residential
that.
subdivision building permits issued only after approval of final plat.
I mean, this is all the city attorneys. This isn't even ours, this is the city attorneys, but I mean, if it's not clear, then.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, my suggestion would be to say who is, that approving body, is it, by the mayor and city council, approval by mayor and city council, or whoever is supposed to be approving that.
Or is that the title to it, and then it's okay to read that way? If that's
Oh,
the
if
title
that's
of
the title
Yeah.
to it, then that's different, yeah.
Right,
If it's a title to that, it can read that way.
yeah.
Well, there is no,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then the
it's-
sub-point
it's
that I
sort
was
of, look
wordsmithing
up the one
is where
above
the
that,
definition
it's
Yeah,
sort of the same type
definition,
of.
yeah, this needs
yeah.
to be, okay.
That's,
So I think it works, because
That-
one
it
is,
works.
one is the title, and then the
One's
other
the
is
title.
the.
that's right, exactly
description.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
that is
it's
the
just a
title.
lot of redundancy, I understand, but that's.
Yeah.
right.
That's so-
So I guess,
Page
try to
8.
trust the city attorney, yeah.
Well, I had a couple more, so page
Okay.
8, section 50-71, number 7. So it just says when an analysis is submitted, and I was just curious as to, who submits that analysis, and do we need to put anything in there about that?
Where are you again?
7.
Number
A
7.
preliminary plat, as defined, may be exempt from traffic and drainage studies and tree surveys when analysis is submitted and concludes the development would have no negative impact on
So that's
traffic.
usually an analysis from the developer or the
Yeah.
engineer. It's the engineer, the developer's engineer will submit the analysis to our staff.
It could be a
and then
traffic
we'll just-
report,
yeah.
a hydrology study, tree study, that's all part of the plat review process.
And does it have to be some sort of certification to that analysis, or?
Well, they all sign off on it.
Yeah, they're all-
The
yes,
traffic
they're-
engineer signs off, the hydrologist signs off, so, if they require a study, they'll say, if you're gonna have, if there's so many housing units, for instance, automatically a traffic study kicks in. So they'll review the traffic study, and when they're satisfied with it, then they'll sign the plan. So their signature is the sign off. So you have to meet their requirements. And so it's just part of the review process.
So I didn't know if we needed, if anything else needed to be put into this to basically kind of clarify, what analysis is triggered when, or
Well, I think
who's
it-
submitting what, or.
It goes up to, if you go to the top of under 50-71, it says all proposals to subdivide, combine, or recombine parcels of land under the provision of these regulations shall be in compliance with the City of Milton standard procedures and guidelines for subdividing property. So it's kind of like a how-to kind of.
And so in that.
So in that
Yeah.
would
It
be the
basically says
specifics of what
the
would be
steps.
expected.
Right.
So
Right.
I think we don't really have to get bogged down into the
In
details.
this,
of-
because
in this
that
part, yeah.
reference.
Right.
It's like a
right.
handbook, yeah.
Yes.
And then I just had a word correction, I think, on page 11. F,
Yep. Uh-huh.
we're at the third line, so it says found to be substantially different, I think, from the previously approved preliminary plat.
Mm-hmm.
It should say different instead of differ.
Different.
Yeah.
Very good.
We got a new Fred in our midst.
I know it. I'm impressed.
The attorney.
I didn't have anything else.
You good?
So, and just let you know, we're probably gonna change some of that E because we have to work out the timing of E about, because right now it says the mayor and city, in E, it says the mayor and city council shall review the final plat at their next regularly scheduled meeting and shall approve the plat. So there's just some things that we have to do, we just were discussing that internally, so there'll be some tweaks and changes to that, I believe.
You mean from a timing point of
Right.
view? So that it won't be mandated for the next regular meeting, we may need a little more time in there, so some flexibility, so we're looking at that.
So I'll have a motion to defer to March, for our March meeting.
Is that what you'd
Yeah,
like is March?
defer,
Yes,
yeah.
right.
Okay.
And we'll be all set at that point.
All right, I'll make a motion that we defer Chapter 50 of the City Code subdivisions consideration to amend the process of plat procedures until the March Planning Commission meeting.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. It's a motion for adjournment, and our meeting next month is 6 o'clock.
Yeah,
That is correct.
The third?
and it's a Thursday, it's a really odd schedule because of all the whatever President's Day or whatever holiday, and then whatever, so it is on a Thursday, because council's gonna be meeting on a Wednesday, so we can't meet that same Wednesday, it's gonna be a
So
Thursday.
it's February 23rd.
Okay.
I don't have that. Yeah. And
It's
starts
on
at
the,
6.
I believe it was on the schedule we did, so.
All right. 6 o'clock on the 23rd, all right. Make a motion, or open up for a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Who made the motion?
Simi.
I did.
Paul did.
Oh,
I
Paul
made
made the
the
motion,
second.
second
Second.
Simi.
Okay.
And here's the, for the minutes, right here.